Week 12 is in the books and it was genuinely insane, but that means that we are so close to the fantasy playoffs. In fact, in some leagues, they are going to be starting in week 13, so you need to get your roster ready, which means smashing those waiver wire pickups. In this video, I've got 8 for you. Let's get into it. But before we get into the meat of the show itself, we do have 8 waiver wire pickups. I wanted to talk a little bit about roster construction heading into the playoffs. You need to be making sure that you are getting the highest upside players on your roster. It is no longer about kind of filling in for bye weeks and making things work with players that might pick you up sort of 5 to 7 points. When you're heading into that championship week, you need to be loading up on players that are going to win you your league. What's the point in playing if you're just going to get into second and go, well, at least my flex put up 6 points? No, you need to be looking at upside. And this season, that is the running back position. The running back position is so incredibly outscoring the wide receiver position. So handcuffs are going to be incredibly important heading into playoffs. On this screen, in this video, I have 5 for you that you can look at who are all under 50% rostered, 4 of them rookies, and incredibly high upside if the starter goes down injured. Obviously, you can see next to me, but Trey Benson, Blake Corum, Tyler Algier, Ray Davis, and Jalen Wright, all players that you need to be going out there to see if they're available and snag. They are going to be the presumptive starter if the current starter goes down, and they are potentially, actually for all 3, going to have 3 down workloads. Potentially not Jalen Wright, actually, with Mostert still, but Wright is currently the RB2 in a really good rushing attack. These are 5 players that you've got to be looking at, and I wanted to kick off the video by talking about these. Load up on RB handcuffs before the playoffs get started. So to kick us off on the waiver wire pickups, Keon Coleman. Sometimes these pickups are about players where there's just been an injury or they've just broken out. Sometimes it's about looking at players who are still on waiver wires, especially after the incredible amount of buys that we had in week 12. The Bills were on bye. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people ended up dropping him because he'd been injured in week 10 and 11, and then obviously missed week 12 on bye. So if you were struggling, you probably had to make room on your roster. He's only 60% rostered on Sleeper, so that tells me quite a lot of people have. Up until so before the bye, week 7 and 8, he finishes the wide receiver 13 both weeks. He had 7 targets in both games. Obviously they traded for Amari Cooper, but he's not really impressed. The Bills are still kind of looking for someone outside of Khalil Shakir to step up in the passing game. Amari Cooper hasn't been able to do it. Mac Hollins is not particularly great. Dalton Kincaid hasn't had a great season. Curtis Samuel neither. Keon Coleman has probably been the brightest spark, and they have a relatively good schedule in the next couple of weeks. So San Francisco and my unfortunate LA Rams, and then an incredible game against Detroit in week 15, which should be an absolute shootout. Keon Coleman is back and healthy from the injury that he had beforehand, and I think he could end up being the focal point of this passing attack going forward, as rookies often do after the bye. It's just that their bye was very late in the season. From someone that we might have expected to break out later into the season to someone that we're very surprised about, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. Since week 6, he has only had 1 game without a touchdown, which is genuinely insane. In that stretch includes finishes at wide receiver 30, 36, 21, wide receiver 9, and the wide receiver 19 currently in week 12 just gone. This is a really strange one. I know that there's lots of comments on Twitter about the fact that no one's ever actually seen him play. There's no film studies. He just occasionally explodes from an 80-yard touchdown. But when you're looking at upside going into the playoffs, that's something you need to be looking into. Obviously, the Titans traded DeAndre Hopkins. Calvin Ridley has been playing really well, but Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is the wide receiver 2 on the team, ahead of Tyler Boyd. He's playing a significant amount of snaps. He's getting a decent amount of targets as well. This is someone that you can definitely start week in, week out. It doesn't feel great, but he's a big play threat every time he touches the ball, and he's actually seeing a decent amount of targets as well. So there is consistent volume there. It felt wrong to not comment upon him, even though I don't feel like I've ever watched a snap of Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. But with the next couple of opponents as well, Washington Commanders and the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Will Levis actually starting to step up his play a little bit, I think this is someone that you can look to start going forward. If you are enjoying this content, I would just like to encourage you to like this video, comment below, and subscribe. We have broken through 300 subscribers, which is very exciting because I've not been doing this for 3 months yet. But I have so many plans for the rest of the season and for the off season. We do these weekly waiver videos. We have weekly dynasty videos, start sets. I respond to every single comment that I get below, every single question, whether it's on YouTube or on Twitter or Blue Sky either. I would love for you to be a part of that journey with me as I head towards the next 100 subscribers. So thank you very much. One of the more confusing stories of the season, again, Devaughn Vele, the 26-year-old rookie, the absolute giant. He's 6'5", 210 pounds, which doesn't sound like a wide receiver, but it is. In the last 3 weeks, he was a wide receiver 19, wide receiver 39, and wide receiver 22. This last week, wide receiver 22, 9 targets, 6 receptions, 80 yards. This is the wide receiver 2 on a good passing offense. Cortland Sutton is far and beyond. He probably has to be treated as a low-end wide receiver 1 at this point, but Devaughn Vele is absolutely a part of this passing attack, and people are still not really coming round to it. He was drafted very, very late because of his age, because he was coming into the league at 26 years old, which is basically a pensioner as far as the NFL is concerned. This is someone that you can look to start as a flex option. They're playing the Browns, who have been quite a weird passing defense. Sometimes elite, sometimes terrible. The Broncos are a massively, massively ascending offense. A lot of it through the running game, but Bo Nix is really getting better through the air as well. Devaughn Vele seems like one of his favorite targets on the outside, so definitely someone that I would look to pick up when he's only 13% rostered. Here we go again, Dontavyion Wicks on a waiver wire video. We all remember earlier in the season when Christian Watson went down and everyone had been saying, these two are sharing time. If one of them goes down, the other one's going to be a league winner. Wicks is the better wide receiver, and then he showed that he has bricks for hands. He absolutely couldn't catch the ball in the slightest. This is someone that, again, has been a limited snap share player throughout the whole season, and the Green Bay wide receiver core is really difficult to figure out. I still think those points that we made earlier this season are true. I think he's very talented. I think he just needs to figure out catching, basically, which we know he can do. But Romeo Doubs went out with a concussion towards the end of the game. He's probably going to miss week 13, which is against the Dolphins, who can be susceptible through the air, and then a really exciting matchup with the Lions in week 14. If Dontavyion Wicks is on your waiver wire, which he is in a lot of them, he is worth a pickup with Romeo Doubs out hurt in week 13. In the last 2 weeks, Noah Gray of the Kansas City Chiefs has been the tight end 4 and the tight end 1, with 4 receiving touchdowns across those 2 weeks. Now, that isn't something we're going to expect going forwards, but the Chiefs obviously like to spread the ball around, and they have a little bit of uncertainty in the receiving game. Travis Kelce still Travis Kelce for a bit. DeAndre Hopkins not fully acclimating with the offense yet, and Xavier Worthy being very inconsistent. Then lots of the other strange pieces around there. When Rashee Rice went down, I did a video talking about who could replace him. I ultimately went for Juju, but part of the option was, do they just play more tight end sets, 2 tight end sets? That's absolutely been the case with Noah Gray getting on the field a hell of a lot more. He is the handcuff to Travis Kelce that we all thought he was, but he seems to be viable on his own, and he's very, very low rostered on Sleeper. So definitely someone that you can look to target and has incredible amounts of touchdown upside, as you've seen in the last couple of weeks. Noah Gray was the wide receiver 23 in week 12 with 71 yards off 6 receptions from 10 targets. He's actually only seen 2 games with less than 6 targets since week 6, which is incredibly impressive for someone that is only 19% rostered on Sleeper. He is the wide receiver 2 on the Commanders, who I was going to say a really good passing offense, but have kind of dropped off recently. I mean, they just lost to the Cowboys, who were genuinely dreadful in a crazy, crazy game. They're probably going to look to replace him in the offseason, but for the time being, he is out there in 2 wide receiver sets and 3 wide receiver sets. He's nearly an every snap player. Yes, he's not the same level of player as Terry McLaurin opposite him, but when you're seeing 10 targets a game, you're going to get some sort of fancy relevant finish in there. As we said, short week, Titans this week that they probably can score a lot of points against, and then a bye week next week, so not ideal for potentially the first round of a three-stage playoffs, but only 90% rostered. It's very, very surprising to have a player who can regularly have sort of 8 to 10 targets be that low rostered on Sleeper. It just depends on what he does with it. But this is someone you can definitely look to start in your flex spot week in, week out. Jeremy McNichols was the running back 8 in week 5 when he scored 2 touchdowns. Aside from that, he's only seen more than 5 carries in 3 other games. He's the RB3 on the Commanders. So why am I recommending him in this video? Well, Austin Eckler left towards the end of the game with a concussion. And I thought Brian Robinson broke his leg earlier on in the game. When you saw that clip, it looked like that's what had happened. Turns out no, he played the rest of the game, wasn't particularly efficient. It wouldn't surprise me if it turns out that there is some kind of issue though. That when they do scans later on into the week, the Commanders have a short week. They're playing the Titans on Black Friday, so they only have 5 days to recover. It wouldn't surprise me if if Eckler goes through concussion protocol, he's not going to be able to play in that game. If Brian Robinson's hurt, they're probably going to sit him in that game. So it could be a combination of Jeremy McNichols and then Chris Rodriguez as well. McNichols is the B-Rob replacement. He'll be the goal line back. Rodriguez more through the air. Not that Eckler's getting a huge amount of work through the air at the moment anyway. This is very much a 1 week spot start because they're on bye the week after, and then the other 2 running backs are going to be back. But if you really, really need in week 13, McNichols is someone that you can pick up and play. And then just a final mention for Bryce Young, who finished as a top 12 quarterback in week 12. I kind of just wanted to bring this up, to be honest, and I was running out of people to talk about. I'm really happy for Bryce Young. He's looked so much better in the last few weeks. It seems that the benching actually did wonders for him, but they've also started to design the offense in a slightly different way to suit the things that he did well at college, at Alabama. He won a Heisman. He's not a bad player. They just haven't actually been designing an offense to his strengths, which they look to have done. The point with Bryce Young in fantasy is that they are always going to be playing from behind, which means there's going to be a significant amount of upside in garbage time. The problem is they're actually very efficient in the red zone with Chuba Hubbard, so you're unlikely to see that many passing touchdowns. But Tampa Bay and Philly, both good teams, Tampa Bay can be carved up through the air a little bit. Bryce Young is someone that you can play, and he's going to be so available on waivers because he's a bit stinky. But starting quarterback, if you're in a Superflex league, you can go and pick him up and you can start him the next few weeks. But mostly, well done, Bryce Young. I'm very glad for you that you seem to have turned it around a little bit, and I hope that you get the start in 2025 in Carolina. So that is going to do it for today's show. Thank you so much for watching. Drop a comment down below if you want to ask any questions about waiver wires or anything about the rest of the season. I'll respond to every single one. Have a great time. Good luck with your waiver claims. I will be back on Wednesday with my regular Dynasty show, and I will see you next time.